For nearly 2,000 years, people have come up with all kinds of theories to explain or to explain away the resurrection. So in the next few videos, we are simply going to look at these theories and weigh them up against the evidence, the historical facts that we've discovered. And we're going to ask the question, do the theories fit the facts? Now, you'll be familiar with this if you've ever played the game Cluedo. Was it Miss Scarlet in the library with the candlestick, or was it Reverend Green in the drawing room with the lead pipe? You gather the evidence together, you compare the theory to the evidence, and you ask, does this theory explain all the evidence? Does it fit the facts, or does it ignore some of the facts? Or do you have to stretch and twist some of the evidence in order to try and fit the theory? So we're familiar with doing this. We might not know the exact names of what we're doing when we look at theories and weigh things up, but we know when something doesn't quite fit, when something's not right, when it doesn't add up. And there are several things that we're actually looking at when we do that. The first is, does the theory have explanatory scope? What I mean by that is, does the theory explain all of the available evidence, or does it miss off a few bits of evidence? Do a few of the facts have to get brushed under the carpet for this theory to work? So in the movie The Fugitive, the suspect in the crime is a curly-haired man with a prosthetic arm. And so you catch a curly-haired man, but he hasn't got the prosthetic arm. It doesn't fit all the facts, so your theory must be wrong. Another thing that we look for is explanatory power. Does this theory comfortably explain all of the evidence, or does the evidence have to be stretched and squashed and teased out and strained in order to fit this theory? Or does it get a bit vague and a little bit ambiguous about some of the facts in order for it to fit? And so maybe if you've ever caught a child red-handed doing something that they knew they shouldn't, and you ask them to explain what's going on, you've come across this where they start their explanation, they begin making their excuses, and then it all starts getting a bit vague and they tail off and they can't really tell you any more. And you know that it's not a true explanation. Another thing to look for is the theory plausible? Does it fit the time? Does it fit the beliefs of the time? Does it fit what we know about Jesus Christ, what we know about the disciples, what we know about Jewish culture of the time, the Roman Empire of the time? So if your theory is that the body was beamed up by a teleportation device onto the Starship Enterprise, you know that is not a plausible explanation. It doesn't fit the facts of the time. Another thing that we look at is the explanation ad hoc or contrived? What we mean by this is it a kind of, it just so happened that kind of story, where the story itself is being tailored to explain away the facts, and it's not really a coherent story or explanation in itself. So it answers the facts, but it doesn't really answer them at all. So maybe you come across a child with chocolate all over their mouth and you ask them to explain what's going on, and they say, well, a squirrel jumped in through the window and the squirrel had chocolate on its tail, and the squirrel's tail brushed past my face just as it jumped past me, and that's why I have chocolate on my face. That's an ad hoc story. It's not plausible. It doesn't fit the facts. It's all contrived to explain it all away. And then the next thing that we look for is, does the theory require you to combine several less plausible theories together to try and make one plausible theory? And so what you have here is that, Jesus didn't really die by crucifixion. He just passed out. And the women were mistaken about which tomb they went to. And someone came in and stole the body. And Paul hallucinated and the disciples hallucinated. And you're adding each less probable theory together to try and make one super probable theory. But the trouble with this is, of course, that if there is a crack in any one of those sub-theories, if they are not true, then the whole edifice falls apart. The whole thing cannot be true. And just because you've combined theories, it doesn't paper over the failures and the cracks in those theories that you've cobbled together. And so just because there's more of them doesn't make them a better theory. So what we're going to do in the videos to come is look at these theories. Are any of these theories a threat to the resurrection? Do they fit the data? There's actually quite a few of these theories. And what's interesting is that they often contradict one another. What's also interesting is that often skeptical scholars who don't believe the resurrection themselves, they have their own pet theory about what happened with all the facts, a theory to explain away the resurrection. And to bolster their theory, they often then attack and refute and show errors in the other theories. And so you've often got people who are no fans of Christianity themselves demolishing these opposing theories for us. So we're going to look in the next couple of videos at some pretty clear examples of how these theories, and we'll see very clearly how they don't really add up, just to get the idea of how all of this works. And then we'll look at the main theories that people come up with to try and explain away the resurrection.